It is the 200 level Mike Carpenter in the basement studio on a Friday afternoon. Illinois is one win away from their first Final Four appearance in 21 years. And they got to this point with the most impressive win in the Brad Underwood era. Full stop. Last night was a triumph for Brad Underwood and this team. And this podcast has obviously been critical of aspects of Brad Underwood as a coach. I can't think of a whole lot from last night. I mean, I can nitpick, but the fact of the matter is Illinois was better from the tip. And they were tougher. They were smarter. They were more talented. So that goes back to the offseason and the roster that he constructed. They played a really good game in the biggest of circumstances. And it was not a perfect game, but I think what you saw was a sound game plan that they executed at a high enough level to beat a Houston team, and not just beat them, but at one point be up by as much as 18. And hey, for a lot of us, I know the last couple minutes were the longest 2 minutes of our lives, going to the free throw line, Colin missing them. Oh, God, it's a 7-point game. They held on, if you even want to call it that. They kept them at arm's length. And part of building that lead, to the extent to which they did, is what led to that victory and to us not sweating things out more. That was 40 minutes of you being the better team than Houston. Maybe there were a couple 4-minute increments between media timeouts where Houston did a little bit of a run or something like that. But no, you were in control against a team that a decent number of people might have predicted to make the title game, certainly make the Final Four. Well, you beat them in their own backyard, if not handily, pretty substantially. And now you were on the doorstep of being that dangerous team from the South. I think that what we need to start talking about, as this podcast has been critical of Brad Underwood, and I have been, if they beat Iowa on Saturday evening, Brad Underwood becomes the most accomplished coach in Illini basketball history. I mentioned this a few months ago. God, if he just makes a Final Four, like it's really that, you know. Derek Piper said something similar. He popped back on the Inquirer podcast earlier this week with Jeremy and Kyle, and he used that word too, accomplished, because that's what it would be. Lou Henson is sort of the iconic coach in Illinois basketball history, and for good reason. He was someone that resurrected this program from the dredges of the mid-'70s, got them back to, top 15 level throughout the 80s. They had the Elite Eight run in 84. They had the Final Four run in 89. He did have a lot of early exits as well. He had one Big Ten regular season title in 83-84, and that was it. So as far as banners are concerned, there was the Big Ten championship, there was the Final Four. Brad Underwood already has Big Ten championship, 2 Big Ten tournament titles, and Lou didn't have the tournament back then, so he might have won a couple. The Final Four has been the elusive thing. And we thought, and I think rightly so, that back in 2021, we had that team. The loss to Loyola did irreparable damage to the idea of Brad Underwood as a coach in March, to myself, to many others. And certainly I've been vocal about it, and I got a microphone. But it is something that I know has permeated the fan base in the way in which it feels confidence or lack thereof when they enter a big game in March. Well, you now have in the last 2 years or 3 years, 2 out of those 3, you made the Elite Eight. And to do so, you had to beat a 2 seed that, at least according to Ken Pom, were a couple notches above you. The similarities between where you were 2 years ago and where you were last night were eerie in a sense. Super late tip-off on a Thursday. We were all dreading it, and God knows I'm just running on fumes right now. And you're coming up against a team that is a defensive juggernaut that's going to muck it up, and you out-mucked them. Like, you out-toughed them, just as you did 2 years ago. The primary difference is this. A generational UConn team is not your next opponent. A red-hot Iowa team is, and they are not to be taken lightly. But if you were to ask any team entering the Elite Eight, given the choices of the 15 possible opponents, who would you choose? They would choose the one that went 10-10 in the Big Ten. They would do that. I think Illinois would make the same decision. So we'll get to the game tomorrow, but by Brad Underwood and this team having a good enough regular season to get this seed and to make this run with some fortuitous bounces, but not last night, there is no break in the bracket in getting Houston in Houston. And not only did they win, I mean, they could have won by a point in the ugliest fashion possible, but they did so in a way that resoundingly eased whatever fears we might have had about what is this team going to do when the lights are the brightest? What is a Brad Underwood team going to do when the lights shine the brightest? Will they fold or will they play their best game of the season? They just played their best game of the season. And I have questioned before this idea of toughness because it seemed fleeting in regular season moments and occasionally in March as well. This Pizza Hut parking lot stuff, whatever. Yeah, Brad can puff his chest out about that after a performance like last night in terms of the toughness quotient. That was something else. And it's the kind of basketball that you can be proud of as a fan. Not that the identity for this team is we're going to knock people over, but they showed they are capable of doing so in addition to being super talented. So, listen, you get one more win against Iowa. I mean, we'll talk about it. Brad Underwood becomes the most accomplished coach in Illinois basketball history. And I have had people on Twitter understandably say, all right, are you getting your hat ready? We will discuss the eating of a hat if they do what they got to do tomorrow. We will figure it out. I promise you. I will not renege on the hat eating if they make the Final Four. And I will not renege on offering up a contribution to the statue if they make the Final Four or beyond. But it is insane the difference the 3 games in 2 weeks makes. And there's no doubt that I ride the roller coaster. And there's no doubt that I get emotional and I say things, which we're going to talk about right after I get to the sponsors. But this much is true. When needed the most, this team and this coaching staff answered the bell. Brad Underwood was better than Kelvin Sampson. And that was, of course, just one matchup, and maybe over the course of 10, it would be much more even, or maybe Kelvin would eventually take the advantage in some way, shape, or form, but not last night. The better coached team won in Houston, and it wasn't particularly close. It is hard, as I sit here behind this microphone, to not just let the the complete jubilation from last night spill over into this, knowing there is one more game. And I will say this before we hit the sponsors. I would understand the concern of, oh God, are they going to take this Iowa team lightly? But I don't feel like I'm watching a team that's on autopilot in any way, shape, or form. I feel like I am watching a team. This goes back to the second half of Penn, where they finally got it. The urgency clicked into gear. And playing a team that almost made a comeback at Iowa City. I'm glad that game got a little bit honest late. I would be very surprised and beyond disappointed if they showed up flat or somehow uninspired. I think for the first time since late January, February 1st in Nebraska, this team is smelling blood in the water. And I'm excited to see how that manifests tomorrow in Houston. So we got a bunch of people in the chat thread. A good afternoon to you. I would not have been particularly good podcast listen last night because I was beaming and just my mind was mush with happiness for what they did and how they did it. So thank you for rolling with me on the delayed entry with this podcast. And then as far as tomorrow is concerned, win or lose, I don't plan to go on until Sunday. If they lose, no one's going to want to talk about it. And if they win, go out and celebrate and have a time. And That's what I hope so badly we can all do in about 28 hours from recording time. Before I get too far ahead of myself, got to remind you the 200 level is brought to you by Hamilton Walkers. Steak, seafood, and spirits in downtown Champaign. My favorite restaurant, and there are many good restaurants in Champaign, but what I love about Hamilton Walkers, the 5-star service, second to none. They dote on you. They take care of you. All the way down to I love any place that does this, bringing out the nice warm bread with the herb butter on a plate. You can get a salad or soup with any steak or entree that you get. Family style sides. We always go with the steak fries, which are crisp, perfectly crisp. And of course, an old fashioned. 2, if you're feeling celebratory. Hamilton Walkers, downtown Champaign, steak, seafood, and spirits. Also, State Farm agent Brian Hansen, online at brianismyguy.com. Life, auto, home, business renters, you name it, Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well at brianismyguy.com. He's a big Illini fan. I know he's feeling good on this Friday afternoon. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call at 217-841-4728. Join their maintenance program. This includes same-day service and no overtime or weekend fees. We got our AC check coming up in about a week and a half, and we're going to need it. It's already starting to get warm, but our HVAC system has been purring like a kitten ever since they started maintaining it a couple years ago. That's Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, 217-841-4728. And finally, Owen Builders LLC, online at owenbuildersllc.com for your next home improvement project. Check out a gallery of their work online at owenbuildersllc.com. You can get a free quote while you're there. Appreciate Luke and his staff, and appreciate all my sponsors for being with us this season. A couple quick things. This season, I saw something on Twitter, which is often a cesspool, but occasionally a nugget stands out. And I don't have Twitter on my phone here. It's only on my computer, and I just access it to make sure this is working for one, but also, listen, social media, it's hard not to check in every now and then, and I'm trying to pull back as much as I can. There was one reply to what I tweeted out last night, because in lieu of a podcast, I just want to get a thought out there, which was the most impressive win of the Brad Underwood era, period. And one said, I'm a listener. You've been really negative this year, and it's honestly been kind of a turnoff. And I've been reflecting on that, and I'm not going to poo-poo that notion. I know that some listeners and some of those in the chat thread, even looking at the comments, would say, well, Carp, we're right there with you with your criticisms of Underwood and the concerns that you had. I think I did have concerns, or valid concerns, I should say, about, okay, well, what is the ceiling with the Brad Underwood, with some of the ways that they were losing games down the stretch, and the feeling that you would maybe peak too early, and that as you were entering the NCAA tournament, you were hobbling a bit. It seemed like confidence had maybe been lost. They didn't have that bounce to their step, and then fatigue, Wagler and all the minutes and all that. So I don't think those were invalid concerns. And I do think there's probably a marriage between the fans' emotive kind of reactions, or the gut feel that you get after watching decades of basketball, coupled with data, analytic driven, just people that really know the game. I do think there's a marriage to be found there. And I'm not going to be the best guy to deliver that with my emotion. But undoubtedly, I have been more full-throated in my criticisms. And it's not that I am so much apologetic for criticizing, but I do think, as a host of a podcast, that we got a niche here. Yes, I've been overly negative, and there's a couple reasons as to why. I think one, full transparency, and I said this after the Music City Bowl podcast, personally trying to figure some things out, and I think maybe that's my age. Midlife crisis. I joke about that, but I have found that, mentally speaking, even for myself, I've been trying to find some balance in my life, and that I've either been running too hot or too cold. And I know for a fact that those frayed wires have shown up on this podcast to the tune of, some angst-ridden rants that sometimes might have went beyond just criticism. So that's not good podcasting on my part for that. And I don't want to be contributing negativity to the world and just spewing or bloviating garbage. I don't want to do that. And I worry that at a couple times in the season, my concerns have probably come across as such. And the second thing is this, and this speaks more to the Illini fan experience. We are a fan base with a chip on our shoulders, not having won a national title. That is the big looming albatross out there. But even that said, I think we all look at a Final Four as something you can hang a banner for and say that was unequivocally a great season, period. There's nothing that anyone can take away from a Final Four berth. And I think what this speaks to is just the joy that comes with winning that had been absent from our experience as fans with Brad Underwood in March. I think that is the other underwriting kind of current here that led to this angst when you saw a team playing so good and thinking, come on, guys, you can be the ones to do this. You can. We see it. To the swoon in February and into early March thinking, oh, God, is this going to be another second round exit or something like that? It was hard, actually impossible, for me to not feel extra about that. Well, winning does cure all. I also think that for the fans, for you listening and watching, for my dad and mom who've been going to games forever, for my sister and brother-in-law and their kids that have been, season ticket holders since they were little ones, for the student teachers at Jefferson that live on campus and were able to see everyone rush alma mater last night. And I told them today, guys, Saturday, if they win, go to Green Street. Just be there and soak in it. Be a part of it. For every Illini fan, whether they're in town or halfway across the globe, I so badly want them to experience that joy tomorrow. And of course, I want to experience it for myself. I know what it felt like in 2005 and the greatest comeback ever. And I hope tomorrow is not nearly that stressful. And you're not playing a 2-seed or really good 3-seed Arizona like you were back then. Were they a 2 or a 3? Regardless, I want Illinois fans to experience joy. And in a weird way, that intense longing to feel that joy led to me being negative and overly so at points on this podcast. That doesn't make it right, but I'm just telling you why and where that probably stemmed from. So we enter this opportunity tomorrow, and God, we can taste it. You can taste it. And as we settle back into the garage with the crew that we had yesterday, there's going to be the nerves. And here's the thing, man, there are nerves before any Elite Eight game. And I've only experienced a few in my life. This will actually, come to think of it, be the fourth Elite Eight game that I, in my consciousness, can remember. 0-1, the loss to Arizona, the Foul Fest, heartbreaking. 0-5, beating Arizona, whoa. And then 2 years ago, didn't go so well. So this would be the fourth. We're 1-2 in those moments. And because of how good that one felt, and because of how good I know it feels for the whole week that you get from Saturday to Saturday, just knowing you're going to play in the Final Four, that is priceless. I look back so fondly on that week between the Arizona win in the Elite Eight, playing Louisville in the Final Four, senior at Urbana High School, every day, because we had off-campus lunch, driving to campus and just wanting to be on the grounds of this university where a Final Four team resided, going to Zaz for lunch or Antonio's Pizza by the Slice. It didn't matter where. We just wanted to be there and soak in it. And it was contagious. It was impossible that entire week to not think about that team and the upcoming game and just how much fun it was. I want people, Illini fans, to experience that. Certainly not Iowa fans. And it's no skin off my back. It's not anything that personal. But of course, we don't want to lose to Iowa. No, guys, this is Illinois' time. This is their time. This is Brad Underwood's time. He answered the bell last night in remarkable fashion. This is right there in front of him to become the dude at Illinois, right there in front of him. I've questioned before, does he want it maybe as bad as a Brett Bielema? Just because of what I perceived as maybe a laissez-faire kind of attitude after certain losses. Well, that happens. And losses do happen. I don't think that's going to be the case tomorrow. And that trickles down to the team. You don't get this far and playing this well and knowing that you're capable of winning a national title to all of a sudden fall back into your shell, even if it's a 9 seed. And maybe especially because it's a 9 seed, because you know what you're capable of doing if you play at your very best. So, what a place to be. I did not at all in any world, after losing to Wisconsin in the Big Ten tournament, expect to be here. And you might say, well, that's a little ridiculous, Carb. That's 3 wins for a team that was fully capable of getting 3 wins. How would you allow yourself to be shocked by this? But the way things had been trending, I don't think there were many Illini fans that were punching their ticket to Indy. But as it stands, it's not just that the bracket has broken in your favor with the exception of last night. It's the fact that with every opportunity so far, this team has played hard, balls to the wall basketball. That makes you think, damn, guys, if you lock in like that, there are very few teams that will beat you other than yourself. And that's always the concern, right? Don't beat yourselves. Well, if they don't beat themselves tomorrow, they will punch that ticket. If they play the ball they're capable of playing, they will punch that ticket to Indy. And I have only once in my life felt that feeling as the clock is winding down. And it's a little bit different with the Arizona game because, they had a shot to win it. So there was no easing into the notion that Illinois was going to the Final Four. It was much more, and then, it probably took me 5 seconds to realize, holy shit, the buzzer sounded. This game is over. This team beat Arizona. I am hoping that tomorrow I can couple that joy that I felt after that Arizona game without the shock, because the shock honestly took a bit to wear off. I was not crying because I don't think at that age, 18 years old, you have the emotional weight of years of fandom to be like, oh. I didn't. I was just blissfully happy, hugging everybody I was watching it with. And up until 2 a.m, went to see the team when they returned, all that, right? I know what it's like, and I know it's hard to get there. And I know for this program, it's been hard to get there. I don't think we can quite calculate the benefit to this program and Brad Underwood and the players and the fan base if they make the Final Four. It is invaluable and will change the tenor. Certainly, I can only speak for myself of how I watch it, but also just judging by reactions on our pod, on Twitter, in the message boards. We all love the success we've had, but we long for more. And there is a validation that comes with making the Final Four that you can't take away. It doesn't go away. It becomes one of those teams that you talk about forever. And there's no shame in that. There's no other fan base that would say, you're still talking about that Final Four team. Hell yeah, we are. It'd be a little bit different if we were talking about, remember that round of 32 team? I love those guys. And then another program could say, really? That's the amount of success you're talking about? That? Not that you shouldn't celebrate those, because we've had so many good teams in my life here that I celebrate, even if they didn't make that ultimate run of the Final Four. But that is a different tier. When you do that, you are now in God tier, right? The S tier of Illini basketball teams. And what a way to cap off 9 years of Brad Underwood, which have been objectively, and I've never, ever wavered from saying this because it's the truth, objectively very good to great, but you wanted to be more on the side of great than very good. A Final Four solidifies that. It does. And I will eat the damn hat, and I will be there to make the statue. And if you want to call it an apology, hey, I don't think that some of those criticisms were unfair. But I know, as I mentioned, my emotion behind them was painted by more than just Brad Underwood. That might have been the unfair part, of which I can do a lot better behind the microphone here. But God dang, man, what a performance last night. Before we get to the chat thread here, of which there's a lot to get through, a couple things I want to single out in that game. I would be remiss if I didn't start with a moment that even Stan Van Gundy called out. And this might seem trivial compared to some of the big shots and what was it, the 17-0 run in the second half, the individual performances like the double doubles from Keaton and David or David. I'll get it right. And that would be Colin Boswell, who missed free throws. We know that. And that is, a concern. Him corralling a loose ball in the last couple minutes of that game, that if he does not corral that, it becomes a run-out fast break for Houston. Stan Van Gundy said that's not going to show up in the stat sheet, but that is a winning play. And I know Kylan was probably beating himself up with those missed free throws. And Lord knows we were cursing the TV a little bit. They're like, oh, make a goddamn, that's a winning play. And that is worth a free throw or two right there. Not going to show up in the stat sheet. He can do better. I think he will do better. But that right there, in a night where the ball bounced your way because you helped create those bounces, that was the ultimate example of that. All right, some other things here. Just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything in particular. Okay, out of bounds off of Houston late. They go to the booth, they look at it. Again, bounces going your way. But why? Because you were the better team. And I'm going to be honest, luck does play a part in basketball. It does. But for the most part, the ball tends to bounce in favor of the better team. It just always seems to be that way. It can be frustrating when you're not the better team. And it can certainly be frustrating if you feel like you're pretty even Steven with your opponent, but they just get all the bounces. Well, that one went your way. Whew, what a relief, too, because they initially called it off of Keaton, but it was clearly off of Houston's foot. All right, speaking of individual performances, Keaton Wagler struggled from the field, and he's got to finish around the rim, and I would imagine against Iowa, he will do a better job of that. However, he did hit a couple of them signature threes that looked nice and crispy. The free throws could be better, but he also had a double-double with rebounds. And that right there, other things were not going great for him. But this freshman still stayed engaged, defended, rebounded, helped you win that game. Was not pretty. I did not expect a Keaton 30-point palooza against Houston. But he persevered in a way that veterans do. So that's winning basketball. It was frustrating the opening 4 minutes of the game where no layup would go in, including 2, maybe 3 of his. Persevered. Mirkovic, again, I don't think offensively the most efficient. He's a dude. He plays his ass off, and I feel like that's contagious for this team. He's a big goofball. We love our big goofball Mirk. The post-game interview, I don't know what Tommy whispered in his ear. I imagine, since Mirk said, I can't tell you, that it had something maybe to do with the overall attractiveness of Lauren Shahadi, who's a good reporter, and she looked fantastic last night. I get the feeling it might have been something like that. Boys will be boys. College-age boys, I think more to the point, will be college-age boys. Regardless what was whispered to him or not, Mirk is a dude. And to see him yet again in the biggest stage show up, he is the fulcrum for next year's roster. You bring him back. You make him the core guy. Another thought that I had from a macro perspective, with this roster, Keaton, Kylan, and Ben are gone, right? If you make a Final Four, you make it a lot more difficult for anybody else to want to leave. And maybe you've already done that. Maybe they've enjoyed their time regardless of what happened Saturday, but it would seem a bit weird if after making a Final Four, you have mass exodus. And if you're telling me right now with the way that this team's playing, that you can bring back Mirk, Stojakovic, the Ibasic brothers, a Jake Davis, a Ty Rodgers, and then you just got to go get your guard play, I'd say, okay, I like you as a preseason top 10 team. That's for sure. And you continue to sustain successful seasons, and maybe you get another shot next year. Just a thought I had about, one more importance of getting this win against Iowa, because I do think that does change the tenor or probably remove some storylines from the offseason. I don't recall many Final Four teams losing possible returning players to a huge degree, right? All right, some other individual performers. I really thought that Tommy had another good game. disruptive defensively. I think that overall to see him take it to the rim a couple times, which he did, but there was a 3 to put you back up 15 that I thought was especially huge in the last, 5 or 6 minutes of the game. So he finishes 9 points, 3 boards, 3 assists. He, played 29 minutes. Overall disruptive. I don't think that the stat sheet shows how good he was defensively for you, and that can be a concern with him, but not last night. Jake Davis, money 3 for you. Had the layup as well. 13 minutes. I thought the defense was okay. There were a couple moments where he did get shook one time in particular. 4 boards for him as well. Hey, just doing what he's got to do. Kylan was 6 and 4. Yes, he was 6 of 10 from the line. 0 for 5 from the field. A couple layups that he wasn't using his body in the best way. However, I do think he's the kind of guy that will bounce back and get you like the 10 and 8 tomorrow in efficient fashion. Benham Rickhouse, 3 points and a board, but that 3 was huge. Zvonimir, 2 points, 3 boards in 12 minutes, but really disruptive defensively. As a team, it was going to come down to rebounds. You out-rebounded Houston by 9. That is no small margin against a team that is an elite rebounding team. You are better than them at rebounding. That's saying something. 3-pointers, 9 for 23. For Houston, 9 of 32. A decent number of those defended. They're a jump shooting team. You force them into that. And overall, Houston for the game shot 34%. So they weren't that much better from 2. Free throws. This right here is the game. Literally the margin. 12 of 21 for Illinois from the line. You know what's so bizarre? Iowa State. I think you shot about 50% from the line against Iowa State 2 years ago. Now, that game was a lot closer. This one, Houston, 2 for 2. They didn't shoot it until the last few minutes of the game. Brad Underwood's idea of a defense that doesn't foul drove us nuts when they were not locking in and keeping a, Nick Boyd in front of them or a John Blackwell in front of him. They kept Houston's quick guards in front of them, and they did not foul. That is elite defense. Assist, Houston 17 to your 13. I still thought the ball movement was great. I thought especially the first 10 minutes of the second half, you were tearing up that double up kind of defense that Houston has. Steals, only 2 for Illinois, but I thought they were in the passing lanes a decent amount. They were forcing more mistakes from Houston than I thought I was going to see. 9 turnovers for Illinois against a defense like Houston. That's fine. You take that. 24 points in the paint to Houston's 18. 12 second chance points to their 10. Houston with 15 points off turnovers. So that was one area to your 7, which kept this game maybe from completely getting away from them. Biggest lead for Illinois, 18. Biggest lead for Houston, 3. And that was, I think, when it was 8-5 early. What a game. What a performance. And it's the kind of thing that gets the national media saying, oh, so you're not just the cute pick for the Final Four. You might be, a title contender. Yeah, that is a fair conversation to have. Now, I'm not going to have that right now because I'm not too superstitious, though I say that, and I will be wearing the same exact thing and standing in the same exact spot on the same exact bar height table in the same exact garage tomorrow, drinking the same drink. And yeah, so I say that. Of course, I'm superstitious. But all that said, we'll cross that bridge after Iowa. Speaking of Iowa, before we get to the chat thread here, and hello to everybody watching on this Friday afternoon. Drop a line. Is there ability to drop a super chat in my window? I don't need your money. I don't. But maybe someday we can monetize the chat. I'm not sure. Iowa, Nebraska last night was a hell of a game. In fact, the only stinker in the bunch was Arizona, Arkansas, and Arkansas's defense was about as miserable as you could have expected. Purdue with the tip in, not quite buzzer beater against Texas, but good enough for one. Iowa won that game as much as Nebraska choked. But that's how comebacks go. So that is taking no thing away from Iowa, who is playing amazing ball, and Ben McCollum is that dude as a coach. This is Drake's roster, essentially, on the doorstep of a Final Four. And it's not like they haven't beaten anybody. They beat a 1-seed Florida and really controlled that game. They beat a 4-seed Nebraska who was in control for maybe 25 minutes, but they let Iowa hang around. Nebraska up 5, I want to say, with 5 or 6 to go. And then the bottom fell out. If you're a Nebraska fan, the 4 men on the court is going to live with you for a long time. And that is a big old bugaboo for Fred Hoiberg, who is a very good coach and had a great season, one that will go down in Nebraska history, but it could have been more. Now, keep in mind, they were trailing by 3 at the time. They were not in the lead. This was not like a buzzer beater, but that dunk and one effectively sealed the deal with about 50 seconds to go. So if you get a stop there, it's a 1-possession game with 25, 20 seconds to go. They would have tried to D him up. Hard to do that when you only got 4 guys on the court. I don't know how that happens when you call the timeout. So I'm sorry, Nebraska fans, because that is a sick to your stomach kind of thing. That's a shitty Friday. Anytime you think about the game, you think, oh God, how did that happen? That is the pain of March Madness, but they stepped in it. So what does that say about Iowa? Well, first off, Iowa is playing some damn good ball right now. And I think that when you look at Fulgaris in particular, becoming like a dude, that's a concern, though I think that you match up well with the Mirkovic on him as a power forward. Your size overall, and I think decent enough athleticism in the front court means that you can keep Fulgaris from going for 16 points on 6 to 7 from the field. Sage had 19 for Iowa. And this one, to me, is the interesting matchup at 6'7", though I do think this is where Stojakovic comes into play. You also got Bennett Sturtz, who is not small himself. I mean, he's 6'4", but that's Kylan. Kylan needs to stay out of foul trouble. He's on Sturtz. Stojakovic, you get the matchup against Sage. Biggs, you get Fulgaris. Koch is the other guy that can drop threes for them. And he's 6'8", but again, your size. I think this is a game where Benham Rickhouse gets about 20 minutes as a defensive stopper of sorts. And I thought he was, again, very active defensively last night. Mirkovic, good defender. I think that you got the Ivasic brothers playing a little bit more in tune. So it'll be interesting to see. My only concern is if Tommy gets drawn outside defensively a little bit more. He was better around the rim last night. But listen, Iowa is good right now. They're very good right now. But given your choice of the remaining teams, this is still the path of least resistance. That is not a slight to Iowa, but more of a commentary on the teams that are remaining. Look at the teams playing tonight. Are you trading any one of them for Iowa as your last opponent before the Final Four? Absolutely not. And furthermore, it is understandable to be nervous about the fact that, oh God, what if it's Iowa that keeps us out of the Final Four? Flip that mindset for a second and keep this in mind. If you win this game, you made it to the Final Four by beating your biggest rival, your hated rival, as Bruce Pearl watches on in the studio. Guys, storylines. It's like they write themselves. And if storylines have any sort of like predestined quality to them, yes, there's the Cinderella story of Iowa and Ben McCollum, a star coach, and he is legitimately that. The dude is brilliant, and it would be A-okay if North Carolina decides to throw him a bag, because that dude with resources, scary to think about. But this story is Illinois'. This narrative is theirs for the taking. This story is about Brad Underwood in year 9 making the Final Four. This story is about this team that all year long was a metrics darling, finally figuring out the intangible parts of the game, the consistent effort that they need in order to make a run. That's what this narrative, that's the stronger narrative. And more than that, it is which team has a chance to win the national title. And tough as Iowa's been, and pardon my dog for barking there, you'll hear it maybe a little bit more. As tough as they've been, you've been pretty damn tough too. It's right there. They can sniff it. They can smell it. I don't have a concern about effort or energy. Is it going to be easy? Probably not. Would I love it to be easy? Of course. I would love the 18-point lead again, just like you did against Houston. I don't foresee that, and I foresee some scary moments. I foresee a feeling of exhaustion either way when the game is over. But there's a reason why Vegas has you as 6.5-point favorites. There is. Not 10, not 15. Wasn't going to happen. It wouldn't be an accurate representation. You're right there at 6.5. I noticed that Purdue and Arizona, that's gotten down to 5.5. No. Iowa deserves respect for what they've done and how they're playing. You do too. And you're the better team. You have more talent. And if you match, just like Houston, the same story, match that intensity that Houston had, I liked our chances. They did. Match Iowa's intensity, I really like our chances. And this is where Brad Underwood gets to solidify his legacy. Right here. So I can imagine this is not going to be some la-di-da in the park pregame. Game faces have to be on, and judging by, listening to some of the player postgame and Brad's postgame, they celebrated as you should, beating Houston. There was a little on-court celebration. They did the Super Soakers. All right, back to the hotel, rest up, and we're turning the page when you guys wake up. And I am sure that is exactly what they did. So, yeah, the butterflies will be flapping around the stomach. But that just means you're playing a big game. You're playing for a chance to go to the fucking Final Four. I mean, unbelievable. And let's get to it. All right, here we go. From some of our folks in the chat thread. This from Champs Nike. Has anyone else been met with absolute lunacy over the past few days watching CBS sports content? Seems like all their analysts are against the Illini. Champs, I thought they were pro-Houston in terms of thinking Houston would win. I think Bruce Pearl is a fan of Kelvin Sampson. You know what's funny? I don't hate Sampson in this second act of his career or final act of his career. I just love what he's turned Houston into. And he's a very no-nonsense guy. The Eric Gordon thing is really ancient history for me. But I understand if you feel that way, but I try not to get too caught up in what analysts are saying. By the way, tomorrow, will it even be that crew? I'm sure that it's going to be the CBS crew on both games. Even though it's broadcast on TBS, I would have to think it's going to be the Charles and the Kenny Smith and all that. From Illini Eaves, Underwood, he did it. One win from Illini immortality. That's it. I mean, that is, you make a Final Four. You are immortal here. You're on the Mount Rushmore if he's not already, but like this certainly solidifies most accomplished coach in Illinois history. From Andy, Saturday night can't get here soon enough. If the defense plays anywhere close to what it did last night, I don't see how Iowa can hang with us. Andy, this is the thing that I will not go so far as to predict a blowout. I think you can take a look at the Florida tape and take a look at, by the way, I don't know what defense Nebraska was playing. I don't understand. I thought it was soft. And not that it surprised me because Nebraska had been sneaky good defensively all year. And they just seem butter soft. So, I mean, of course, that is a credit to Iowa, but Nebraska doesn't have the dudes that Illinois has. Florida had the dudes, but just not the backcourt, apparently. I think that you've got the balance and the size and the talent that if you match it with the intensity that you had last night, yes, you're better than Iowa, and you're probably more than 6.5 points better than Iowa. I can see this being a 9 or 10-point win. I really can. From Wagler time, beat Iowa. From Jacob, I'm so nervous for tomorrow. Just get a win no matter what. And that's the thing, Jacob. It's not about style points. You don't need that. And last night wasn't about that either. At this point, it is just find any way, shape, or form to get to a win. All right, elsewhere here. From Champs Nike, if we win 2 of the following 3 categories, we're going to win. Defense, rebounding, 3-point percentage. You know, the funny thing is, Champs Nike, I could say, well, duh. But it's the truth. And the beauty of last night's game and the way that Illinois won was the simplicity of it. It just goes to show, and this is the best part of sports, is that, you know, often the team that wants it the most is the team that gets it. They wanted it more than Houston last night. And that's really been a continuing thread with Underwood's teams is that, man, push comes to shove. Do they want it as much? Is there that intangible factor that the opponent has? They did last night. They did against VCU. They did against Penn. And I know those are lesser than teams, but when you started to see that intensity creep back in, mixed with the confidence, that I think was super encouraging. One thought I had as well, I had this analogy that I think of sometimes where, when you play a really tough team and then you play a not as tough team, it's like being in the on-deck circle with a donut around your bat, right? And that when you take the donut off, it's just easier to swing that bat. Iowa's defense is fundamentally sound. And oddly enough, I'm pretty sure it's more efficient on the season than their offense. Though their offense has been super efficient in the tournament. Their defense is not Houston's defense. Their dudes are not Houston's dudes. I would have to think by that alone, offensively, you aren't going to see the first 4 minutes that you did against Houston where you were just like, oh my God, it was exhausting in a way because you could tell that we were trying to acclimate ourselves to that pace and to that just frenetic style of defense. You are going to be able to get to the spots that you want to. You're going to be able to get shots a little bit easier than Houston. Does that help you out to the tune of 75 instead of 65 points? Because the way these two teams play slow, a slow tempo, 75 points should win this game. The final yesterday with Nebraska and Iowa, 77-71. Yeah. 75 points wins this game. Can Illinois score 75 against Iowa? I 100% think so. In fact, I actually want to check and see what was that final back in December. Yeah. 75-69. That'll do. That'll do. All right. From Andy. Also agrees with the idea, 2 of those 3. Alana McGee, I believe that we will win. This team showed us their toughness last night. Proud to be part of Illini Nation, ILL. From Czar, I'm choosing to take Iowa lightly. F those Hicks. Okay. Czar, I love the confidence, and I feel confident too. I do. Will I wake up with nerves? Of course. It's a big game. Will I wake up with as many nerves as if you were playing Florida? No. I know Iowa beat Florida, but Cinderellas do happen in the tournament. And sometimes it ends. These Cinderella stories eventually have an end. It is Illinois' time to be the one to put that to rest. In this case, Iowa. From David, it's not just the Loyola game. It was that game along with UConn, the failed strategy of going after and trying to get Klingon in foul trouble, which wasn't a bad idea, but had to get away from it sooner when it wasn't working. Had to try something different. Drag Klingon out with threes by Coleman. Something different was needed. So that right there, David, I think, was alluding to when I was talking about, why last night was so meaningful given the previous March disappointments. And those were disappointing efforts, David, that cast questions onto Brad Underwood in this moment. Answered a lot of them yesterday and can really just put an exclamation point on all of it tomorrow. From Andrew, honest to God, I think this Illini team could come out and beat Iowa by 20 tomorrow. They seem so locked in. Either way, I'd take this over having to upset a 1 seed. It is a winnable game to go to the Final Four. Let it rip. 100% Andrew. He was busy last night following all the storms around the area. And man, we're in the garage. Not a lot of insulation on the roof. So it was pelting us. Hail at one point, and it was loud in there. But it kind of added a cool excitement to all of it. And yeah, a lot of fun. From Wagler, time, our Lord and Savior Keaton Wagler will bring us to the Final Four. I will say that I do think this is a Wagler game. We've yet to really get one in this tournament. Penn was Merck. Second game, Wagler got 13 of his 14 in the second half. More of a team effort. Stojakovic had the 21 points. That was a Stojakovic game. Yesterday was, with the beauty of yesterday, is as I was going down the stat sheet, I was reminded that there wasn't like one dude for Illinois that just dominated. It was just great team ball for 40 minutes. And it was always one guy and then another guy and then another guy. So everybody picking each other up. I do think that it is prime time for a Keaton Wagler kind of game. All right, this is from Andy as well. I feel like tomorrow could end up like the Louisville game in 05. Crazy emotional game against Arizona, then just beat the brakes off of Louisville in the next one. Another thing to keep in mind, Andy, is there is an emotional component to Iowa as well. That win yesterday for Iowa doesn't come without a lot of emotion themselves. It was not a crazy big comeback, right? So it wasn't that they had to expend a bunch of energy coming back from 20. It was that the entire game was a back and forth, tug of war against a rival, which you'd already had 2 close games against, and that you won in such emphatic fashion late that it's just, the endorphins and stuff they had to have felt. There isn't the longer extended break between Florida and Nebraska that there will be Nebraska and Illinois. I think that the emotional component, this idea that either team might have a slight hangover, both teams would be equally in the same boat, given what they expended yesterday. Maybe physically more so for Illinois, but I think that physically they're able to withstand that. But all that said, I don't question that both teams are going to come out ready to go. I just think that if all things are equal and you're playing with the same amount of intensity, that Illinois is better enough to, Andy, I don't disagree with this idea, the Louisville game in 2005. Now, I'm pretty sure at halftime, you might have been up by 5 or 6 in that game. It was not a blowout, but you were in control and you were the better team and you did what you had to do. I can see that tomorrow. I hope that's what it is, to be quite honest. All right. Yeah, this one from Champs Nike, about an 8 to 10 point lead for that entire Louisville game. That sounds right. And then Andy mentions the putback from Roger Powell. Up through Big Z's dunk, the best dunk in Illini tournament history. More important because it was in a semifinal, but nonetheless. Oh, Zara makes an interesting point. You were carrying residual Illini trauma. Aren't we all? I just wear it on my face and in my words. So thank you, Zara. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Residual trauma. Let's wipe a big old slate of that off the board tomorrow. From Michael Gerard, hey, Carp. Holy cow, we made it to the doorstep with the ring right there. It's right there, Michael. It's right there. From Dojo Drama, Luther Head era vibes. Well, in terms of Dojo, if you're talking about Luther Head and that very famous image of him grimacing as he's going down for a layup against Arizona, there was a toughness to that team. They were finesse in the way that they were able to play offense with the ball movement. Finesse is not a bad word if you can couple it with toughness, and they had that. All right. From Andrew, that Merck block on the 3-point attempt late in the second that may or may not have been a foul was such a flex moment. Get that shit out of here. I'm so fired up. Dude, that was such a good block. So good. St. Dom is here. We're in the Elite Eight. Feels good, but now we have to play Iowa that has nothing to lose because they should not be in the Elite Eight. This game will be tougher than Houston. We cannot lose to Iowa. It's tricky, St. Dom, because I don't know if Illinois is going to go up 18 against Iowa. So by that metric, it will be tougher from a margin perspective than Houston. I just have a hard time imagining physically it will be as tough. We'll see. And what, guys, it would suck to lose to Iowa. We would cross that bridge when we need to, and hopefully we don't. But it would suck. It's okay to say that. Yes, Andy, I'm not superstitious. I'm a little stitious. That was something. Did we used to say that on 93.5? Moderately stitious. I think that was a Tay and J thing. All right. Yeah, nice here from Champs Nike. As long as we have 5 guys on the court, we should be in better shape than Nebraska. Yeah, I would agree with that. That was just unbelievable. And from St. Dom, all I'm saying, we better be ready and fired up to play Iowa like we were against Houston. I cannot stress this enough. If we come out flat, we're going to get beat. They beat Florida. Yes. That right there, St. Dom, is where I am taking that leap. And it really hit me the second half of Penn that, I know that was not a good opponent, but they looked like they want to be here and they wanted to compete. And then that continued through VCU and it continued through last night. The interesting carryover in all 3 games, you've had a slight lull in the first half in all 3. It was late in the first half last night at the very end of it. 2-point game going into halftime when it probably should have been more like 7. But every second half, you want to talk about halftime adjustments. Every second half, Illinois is dominated. So if you're leading going into halftime, you should feel good. And I know this team blew leads in February and all the way up to the Wisconsin game in the Big Ten tournament. But they're kicking into a different gear in the second half in this tournament. So just have a lead going into halftime. Thank you, Pat OD. They make candy hats, Carp. They do. And I'll be honest, it might seem like a cop-out if we get to this point, but I'm looking for something edible. I read that it's not good to actually eat the materials of a hat. I know the Dahmer Party, when they were starving to death, they boiled their own shoes. And that was what little nutrition they had left before they started eating their corpses. Ew. That got a little dark. I am going to find a way to eat a hat of some kind if this team makes the Final Four. I guarantee it. I promise. All right. Let's see. Try to get a couple more here. Oh, from Champs. I got to run, but thanks for doing what you do, Carp. And thank you for all the fans of the chat. Tonight's game watching is going to be stress-free and awesome. It will be. Will I make it up through the end of the Michigan State-UConn game? Man, with my energy right now, I don't know if I will. And Andrew brings that up too, just sitting back on a Friday, watching basketball, taking a sip of a cold one, and comfortably thinking we're still in it. And the better part of that, Andrew, is you make the Final Four, you get a whole week. A whole week of that. Joel mentions free throws. Yes, 100%. They know that. I think they will do what they got to do with that. We're on the doorstep. We are on the doorstep. And I will only be nervous in the sense that I know how good it feels. And I want to feel that way again. And I want all of you to feel that way as well. That's what the nerves will be about. Knowing how good it is. And that's right there. You know, predictions or whatever. This team, I went into last night thinking, I feel good. I felt like I did against Iowa State. I noticed that even as the game was over and we're kind of celebrating in the garage, but, you know, no more than 10 minutes later, all right, see you guys Saturday. Business. You know, like, we're not going to put all of our eggs in this one basket. The Iowa State game had a little bit more of like a holy crap. You know, there was the Terrence dunk, there was the crazy finish, and we had a cigar and a couple extra drinks, and man, that was a groggy Good Friday after that. No, there was a sense, and I would imagine that the team and the coaching staff, having also lived through that UConn loss, learned their lessons about how do you come back from an emotional win in the Elite Eight. That was emotional last night, for sure, and it should be. But I think that it only reaffirms to this team, okay, we keep doing this, what we're doing, which is something you can carry over. You can carry over the defense. You can carry over the rebounding. You can carry over the effort. That plays no matter the opponent. I would hope that last night solidified to them, just keep doing that. If they do it, they win something like 75-63. I got to go with what I'm seeing. And what I'm seeing is a really, really good basketball team. And Iowa's really good right now too. But if you're in the Elite Eight, you're red hot. They all are. There's not a team in the Elite Eight that isn't red hot. I see that narrative a lot. Iowa's red hot. Well, what the hell are we? Pretty hot. So do what you got to do. It's business. Laser focus is what I feel like I've been seeing from this team. It is toughness, but it's also with this sort of like kind of quiet grit. I'm not seeing performative toughness, right? I'm seeing a team that's just like, okay, we got to be mentally locked in. And I think a lot of the toughness that we're kind of taking away from it is the fact that they're in the right place at the right time, defending in the right way. That all starts mental, and it kind of carries your feet to where you got to be to keep your guy in front of you. Illinois has the size and the athleticism. And Iowa, good as they have been and efficient as they have been, are not an athletic mismatch. I thought Houston, if anything, would have an advantage being able to get to the rim and get around you. They did a few times, not that much. So I think this is a very good matchup. I think if you take the jersey or the name off the jersey, you'd feel amazing. But Iowa's on that jersey, and there's the emotion with that and the added nerves. Understandable. But remember, that's the nerves of, oh, God, what if we lose? Think about, wow, how cool would it be if we make the Final Four and the team that we beat to do it is Iowa? Come on. That's storybook stuff right there. So when we talk on Sunday, if we talk on Sunday about a Final Four trip and how to prepare a hat and whatever other conversations come up, it will be done with just the greatest feeling of joy, a little bit of relief, I hope that your Saturday is every bit as memorable as it can be, wherever you're watching it. We're not going to do a pod live. I don't plan on doing, as I see here from, let's see, is this Hassan? I don't plan on doing one after the game either, because if you win, it is just revel in it. I don't know. Go to campus, just meet the team if they fly back in, that kind of thing, right? So, yeah, this is the thing you live for as a fan. An opportunity to go to a Final Four. That is lifetime stuff, lifetime memories. So let's get it done. Let's get it done. Before we get out of here, got to remind you the 200 level brought to you by Hamilton Walkers, downtown Champaign, steak, seafood, and spirits. I mean, come on. If they win tomorrow, is there a better place for a celebratory dinner than Hamilton Walkers? And you know it'll be buzzing with that. So just planting that seed out there. They win, go get yourself a fine, fancy dinner. You deserve it. A lot of fans deserve it if they get that W against Iowa. State Farm agent Brian Hansen, online at brianismyguy.com. Life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it. Whatever your insurance needs, visit online at brianismyguy.com. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call at 217-841-4728 and join their maintenance program. Same-day service, no overtime or weekend fees with Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing. And finally, Owen Builders, LLC, online at owenbuildersllc.com. For your next home improvement project, check out a gallery of their work online at owenbuildersllc.com. Do me a favor. Before you go, my live listeners, viewers, like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. Notification bell. I never hit that, but go ahead and do that. We'll be back Sunday. Have a great Saturday. Please, whatever you do, just soak it in and let it be the memory it deserves to be. And that goes to the team and the coaching staff as well, but they're right there. They're right where they want to be. It's fortunately not waiting until 9 o'clock. 5 o'clock is a lot more feasible. I love that we're the first game. And let's make a day of it. Let's do it. We'll talk to you on Sunday. It is the 200 level.